Hey, good morning, everybody. Um, we are
Morning.
live for episode 60 of Trek
60.
Live. Today, Bill and I are putting on our cinephile hats, and
Mhm.
we are going to talk about Star Trek's most cinematic episodes. How are you doing this morning,
Yes.
Bill?
I'm doing really well. I think this is a cool topic. I'm looking forward to cracking it open and seeing what we have. I'm hoping there are some people in the chat this morning that might be able to throw their ideas out there because there are a ton of cool options, and I don't think we can cover them all ourselves.
Nope.
So I'm hoping that we have a little audience participation that might, bring some other cool candidates up too. How's your weekend been? Happy birthday, by the way.
Thank you.
You're newly 24, right?
Yes, thanks for all the birthday love.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Got quite a bit of it. Pretty cool.
Yes. Yep.
What'd you do? Did you do anything cool? Feel any older?
I don't feel any older. I tell people this all the time. I like 24 better because it sounds like, he's not really a kid anymore. He's starting to kind of get his life, put together. Like 22, 23, you're like, still a kid. Like
Yeah.
24 and 25, it's like you're on your way to kind of having your life together. So
Yeah. 24 definitely sounds like college graduate, life started doing stuff.
Yeah.
23, 22. I hear you. I know what you mean.
Yep.
John, it is happy birthday, Dan, not Bill. It is Dan's birthday today. Or yesterday was his
Because
birthday.
I think that I need to figure out the graphics because
We're flip-flopped again.
Yeah.
Yeah. Sorry about that. It's supposed to be the other way around. We're trying to figure out what's going on there. But
Yeah.
I'm Bill. For anybody who's new, this is Dan.
Yep.
It is Dan's birthday weekend. His birthday was yesterday.
Yep.
So he's had quite a weekend. But we're here, ready to talk some Star Trek. There's some news that I think we have to cover before we really crack the topic open. Since we've last been live, Star Trek Discovery announced that Spock has been cast.
Yep.
Ethan Peck, Gregory Peck's grandson, is going to play Spock in season 2 of Discovery. I don't have a whole lot to say just because I don't know much about him other than he's Gregory Peck's grandson, and I think he's got the look. I think he looks reasonably like, a young Spock would look.
Yep.
So I'm content. I'm kind of glad that it's not a big name. I think the right move in a situation like this is probably to go with somebody who's a little more unknown. If you're not going to go with somebody who's played Spock before, like Zachary Quinto, I think it makes sense to not, go with a big name. So I'm kind of glad that's the route they went. What do you think? Do you have any thoughts on casting news?
Yeah, I have a few thoughts. I think that I feel like it's easy to cast someone who looks like him. I think the real test is going to be, hey, can this guy, like his performance, is it going to be true to the Spock, or is he going to kind of bring into some nuances to the character? So I'm just curious in that regard.
For sure. Me too. Casting a character like Spock is, obviously a challenge. Spock is, he is the definition of kind of what Star Trek is to the popular culture out there. I think if you ask most people that really don't know Star Trek to, spit something out about Star Trek, they'd say the guy with the ears, Spock, they might know that name. It's such an iconic character, and he's such a specific character. It's not just like a human character who's got human traits. It's got to be somebody who can pull off the logic and the emotion underpinning, like all the bubbling stuff underneath. You have to be able to do that, like Nimoy did, and like Zachary Quinto has kind of done in his own way. It's a tough needle to thread. So the real test, like you said, is really not so much the look. I think finding somebody who looks kind of the part is maybe the easy part.
Yep.
Finding somebody who can embody all of those characteristics in a credible way is the real challenge. And I think the other part of it is, since this is taking place, 10 years before the original series, 9 years now, I guess, I think it's okay for Spock to be a little bit different. If you watch Spock in the Cage / the Menagerie, he's a little more emotional. He's not quite the Spock that we know yet. So, yeah, John Jones is saying it'll be interesting if he does classic Spock or Cage Spock, all smiling and yelling and stuff. Yeah. before Nimoy really kind of nailed down what Spock was going to be. Spock was a little different, and it'll be interesting to see if they kind of ignore some of those characteristics that you see in early TOS and kind of credit it to its early production stuff, kind of just turn the other cheek on some of that and pretend it never happened, or if they try to embrace it a little bit and try to explain maybe some sort of a change in Spock, where he maybe becomes a little bit more refined as a result of some of the things that we see throughout this arc, this season storyline. So it's going to be really interesting. You know, there's a lot of questions about season 2. We're big Discovery fans. For anybody who's new, I think both of you guys, John and Grin Salem, I'm hoping I'm pronouncing your name right. I don't remember seeing you in here before. Maybe I did. I'm forgetting. I'm sorry if that's true. But Dan and I are definitely big Discovery fans. We are excited about where the show is going. We liked season 1 a lot. So there's a lot to be curious about, a lot to be excited about. And, you know, I'm glad it's getting a little closer. And, you know, not too many weeks usually go by without some piece of interesting news like this. So, yeah. Any other news that you want to kind of touch on? I think that's pretty much the big thing.
That's it, yep.
Yeah. We've covered all the Picard stuff in the last couple of weeks. Nothing really new there. I think the Ethan Peck is the news of the week. So, yeah, just interested to see where that goes. Real quick, before we kind of get going into the topic, one last thing. We usually do start off with like a rewatch update. What are we watching lately? Have you seen anything? I know our last episode was about Best of Both Worlds because you had just hit that on your rewatch. We really dived into that. Have you watched anything since the Best of Both Worlds?
Yeah, so I've watched I think Family, and then Brothers, the 2 episodes that have the single, you know, word titles.
Title.
I really loved Family. It made me tear up.
Yes.
So I mean, it's
great.
I love that episode. So yeah,
it's definitely different, right? Like it's not. There's really not many Star Trek episodes quite like it. I guess like the closest you might come to it is an episode there's an episode of Enterprise in season 4 called Home, where it's the first episode when they're kind of back from the Xindi ordeal and the crew's all kind of going off dealing with it in their own way. Very character centric, no real, you know, science fiction elements going on. That's probably the closest that we ever came to Family since. So yeah, it really stands out to me for that kind of reason. It's in its uniqueness. But Patrick Stewart's amazing in it. You know, there's a lot of depth there. It's really cool to see that they didn't, like we talked a good bit about last week, you know, the end of the Best of Both Worlds, that last shot you kind of talked about with him staring out the window and you kind of just see the expression on his face where you kind of know he's not okay. It's not like, okay, it's all behind him, we're all good moving forward. All is well. That really telegraphed that not all is well. And he's got some demons to battle, and Family, you go right into them. You know, he's really struggling and has a lot of guilt, and he's got a lot of demons to battle, and he's working through them in Family. And kind of trying to figure out where he wants to go, and does he want to stay in Starfleet or not? And then I think the Worf stuff's really good too. I think that's kind of underrated. You talk about like getting teared up by the episode. I don't know, was it the Picard stuff or was it the Worf stuff with his parents?
It was the Picard stuff, but it was still really emotional with the Worf stuff as well. It was a really emotional episode, I think.
It is. Yeah. It definitely is, and it just like the Picard stuff is like all harkening back to the Locutus Best of Both Worlds story. Worf's parents are there checking on him because of what happened like half a season ago in Sins of the Father, where he's kind of disowned by the Klingons, and they know their son well enough to know that that's gonna bother him. Like they know that's tearing him up, and I love how much continuity is kind of there in Family and how they're it's all kind of about things that have already happened. There's not a whole lot of new challenges going on there. It's really all capitalizing on the character development that we've had for the first 3 seasons as we get into season 4. John Janet says if you've got a brother, Family works. For sure.
I don't have a brother. I have a sister, but it still works.
It works. If you have a family, Family works. I think. But did you like Brothers as well?
Yeah, I liked it. Yep.
Mm.
Yeah, John Jones said Spiner deserved an Emmy for Brothers. He did have a good performance because he had to, play Lore, who's, Lore, I guess, and then also the kind of contrast Data. So yeah.
And Dr. Soon. He was Dr. Soon too.
Yeah. Yep.
So he's got a three-way. He's playing three characters who are often in the same scene. So that definitely is an all-time Brent Spiner performance. I would definitely agree with that. So yeah, you hit some good ones there.
How's your rewatch going?
It's going well. I'm early in TOS. I've watched the first 9 episodes. Yesterday I watched, or between Friday night and yesterday, I watched Mud's Women, What Are Little Girls Made Of, Miri, and Dagger of the Mind. I'm hoping to get at least 3 or 4 more in today. But yeah, early season 1 is I kind of talked about this before. Kind of interesting. It's very serious. I think TOS often gets kind of a reputation for being kind of light and cheesy and in all the right ways. It's got a lot of humor to it. It's never takes itself too seriously. But I think if you go back and you look at that first chunk of episodes when Gene Roddenberry was really running the show in its initial early days, episodes like I just named, it's a very serious show. It's very dark. The episodes often don't end happily. It's dealing with dark themes and not a lot of humor, not a lot of joking around. It's kind of a different show than what you get later in TOS. So it's always an interesting kind of contrast. Could the show have survived, and would the show have been the classic it ultimately became if it kept this tone all the way through it? Because I know a lot of people. One of the reasons a lot of people connect with TOS is some of the lighter stuff, the humor and the twinkle in the eye kind of stuff that you get from the characters, and not all of that is really there in the early episodes. So that always gives me a lot to think about. I think the episodes that I've watched this weekend are a little bit of a mixed bag. I'm not huge on Miri. I'm not huge on Mud's Women. I think What Are Little Girls Made Of is pretty good. It's good. It's a solid episode. It's got a lot of interesting stuff to chew on. Dagger of the Mind's kind of a mixed bag. They're meaty. There's a lot there in all of these episodes. There's a lot of big ideas and cool science fiction stuff happening in pretty much all of them. But I can't say that they're quite favorites for me. But I'm getting ready to get into that. The next handful of episodes is pretty loaded. Things like the Corbomite Maneuver and the Menagerie and Balance of Terror are all kind of right around the corner. Some classics are coming when I think TOS really finds its footing and kind of becomes the show that people, envision when they think about TOS. Yeah. John Jones says all art is a product of its time, and 60s TV is what it is, but early Trek is nothing like. It's like nothing else that has come before, for sure.
Right on the money, I think.
Yeah, I mean, I think if you go back and you watch, put on MeTV if you have that, and I don't know where you guys are from, but MeTV is a channel that we have that shows all kinds of 60s and 70s TV, and my parents watch it and I see it, in Cornell. I can't claim to watch a lot of it, but when you watch shows from that era, Star Trek is certainly a product of its time, the original series, but I don't think there's any question that it holds up as well or better than a lot of the things that came from that time for whatever reason. I think it just maybe I'm biased, maybe I don't know. But it's definitely a unique animal as far as I'm concerned from that period of time. Cool. So a lot of good stuff coming up on our rewatches. You're getting into season 4 of TNG. I'm getting into season 1 of TOS. So I'm sure we'll have a lot of cool episodes to talk about as we keep going in the next few weeks.
Yeah.
But our topic of the week, like you kind of teed up early on, right when we started, is cinematic Star Trek episodes that, have cinematic qualities that might benefit more from cinematic treatment. What episodes are built like, feature films and would make good feature films in the Star Trek world. And I think we both decided we were going to pick 3, I think.
Mhm.
Just kind of keep it concise. I have a huge kind of list of other episodes to kind of throw out there,
Mhm.
as well as kind of like honorable mentions. There's and I could throw a lot out of my head just kind of on a whim, I think. But I think we're going to do our top 3 first, and then kind of just see what else gets named, maybe from the folks in the chat,
Mhm.
and talk about whatever comes up and go from there. But let's start with you. What's your number 3 episode?
So my number
Star Trek?
3 is the Vulcan Hello in the Battle of the Binary Stars.
Okay.
Going with Discovery.
Mhm.
I think right out of the gate, it just feels big, big shots, you know, big set pieces. It just feels really big.
It does.
Both episodes are paced really well. I think they're, they feel like 10 minutes, and
Yeah.
I think that it would make a great feature film, I think.
I think it's really built like one too. It's very kind of self-contained. It's got a beginning, middle, and an end. Like those 2 episodes have a pretty distinct story. One of the challenges when I was thinking about this, I was thinking about Discovery, and those 2 definitely stand out as like the cinematic options in Discovery. But I was having a hard time with picking any others because of the serialized kind of structure of the show, where the episodes are so dependent on things that are have come before, and things that are being teed up for the future. So that was kind of a hurdle for me to pick a Discovery episode, but these 2 are like the perfect example, because it is so self-defined or self-contained. It's a complete story, really. And like many people have said, and we certainly said when it aired, it kind of feels like a prologue for the series. It's like its own little setup. So that's a really good pick. Burnham certainly has like a complete character arc, kind of in just those 2 episodes. Giorgio and Saru get a lot of cool kind of development in the first 2 episodes alone. So love that pick. I think it makes a lot of sense. I think it's the cinematic traits of it from like a production element, from the production side of things, are obvious. It's clearly gorgeous to look at, and there's a lot of big set pieces in it, huge battle scene, and cool set pieces. So definitely a good pick.
What's your number 3 pick?
My number 3 pick is a little bit outside the box. It's a Deep Space Nine episode. It's called Starship Down. It's an episode in season 4 when the premise of the episode is they're kind of out just doing their thing. I think they're on like a routine like trading kind of mission in the Gamma Quadrant. They get attacked by the Dominion, by the Jem'Hadar, and they get driven into the atmosphere of like a gas giant. And they're playing cat and mouse with these 2 Jem'Hadar ships, and the Defiant's really badly damaged. The crew is kind of like siphoned off into their own little sections. It's a really desperate situation. Sisko's injured. I think it's cool because of the in a kind of Star Trek Beyond sort of way, where the crew is kind of split up and has to find their way back together to kind of solve the problem. James Cromwell's in it. Yep, he plays an alien that's stuck in the mess hall with Quark. There's like a torpedo that's like lodged into the hull that hasn't detonated, and Quark and this alien are trying to figure out how to disarm it without blowing the ship up. So everybody's got like this cool little storyline that I think really could have been developed more in a cinematic kind of setting with more time to play with. Dax and Bashir they're stuck like in a corner of the ship, surrounded by atmosphere from the gas giant seeping in, and they're having to deal with like all the tension from Bashir's attraction to Dax and stuff like that. So I think the visuals are suited to a cinematic treatment. Being stuck in the gas giant and space battle in a gas giant. Like there's some really cool set pieces that I think would really benefit from a cinematic treatment. I think the characters are put in positions to do bigger things than maybe they're usually doing. So that's kind of a different one that stood out to me. It kind of came to mind pretty quickly. Do you remember that episode? I know you haven't done Deep Space Nine in a little bit. It's coming up soon.
Really.
Not really. Yeah.
But
because it's it's kind of a tucked away standalone episode in like the middle of the show. It's in 4th season. It's not in the midst of like the Dominion stuff. So I think for somebody who's maybe only watched Deep Space Nine once, it's probably an easy one to kind of forget. It's very good, no doubt about it. It's a strong episode, but it's maybe not one that comes to mind immediately for a lot of people when they think back to Deep Space Nine. Yeah. What's your number 2?
So my number 2, you guys know me that's been watching Trek Live for a while. I can't not mention Voyager. So my number 2 pick is Scorpion. I chose this because I think, again, it feels really big, but I think that this feels like, it does have a beginning and a middle and an end. But I think that I picked it also because, it was a big staple, and it kind of changed the look and feel of the show, and moving forward into the following season. So that's why I went with Scorpion.
Scorpion's is a really tough one not to have on my list. It's not on my list, but I was confident that it was going to be on yours, so I felt okay about leaving it off for that reason. But it's definitely, undeniably cinematic with all the Borg stuff, and it does shake up the show. Like, and that's one of the things that I remember hearing. If you listen to like the audio commentary on the Star Trek Generations Blu-ray, DVD, whichever one you have, with Ron Moore and Brandon Braga do a commentary, and they're talking about kind of the challenge with the first TNG movies. They wanted to do things that they couldn't necessarily do on the TV show. Like, they wanted to shake things up and do things that were like big to the characters. Like, Picard's family kind of getting killed off, the characters that you saw in Family and Generations get knocked off. And the emotion chip for Data, like changing the characters in a way that especially 90s TV wasn't necessarily apt to do. And Scorpion kind of fits the bill in that way. Like, Scorpion really does shake things up. It does big things to the show, and big things to the premise of what's going on. So I think there's a lot there that would certainly be suited to a cinematic treatment. Real quick, doubling back, John Jones mentioned The Way of the Warrior. He says that's better than half of the movies. That's a bold statement. The Way of the Warrior is a classic Deep Space Nine 2-hour episode. I don't know if I would say it's better than half of the movies, but it's better than some of the movies for sure. Looks like he agrees with you on the Discovery choice, because of the budget and technology that's already kind of inherently there. So definitely a good choice there, Scorpion.
What's your number 2 pick?
My number 2 is Balance of Terror, TOS episode. Balance of Terror is really built on this idea that the Romulan commander on this ship is not really an evil person. He's not just like a mustache twirling bad guy. He's a guy doing a job. He's really kind of conflicted about it, and kind of knows, that it's not necessarily morally right. And like, there's all this moral complexity going on, and they really do a good job in the episode of making it a twofer. Like, you get, you don't quite spend as much time with the Romulan commander as you do with Kirk, but you spend a lot of time with the Romulan commander and his crew. And it really does a good job kind of humanizing, for lack of a better word, that ship, that crew. And I think with the cinematic treatment, a lot of that stuff could be done even more. More time could be spent with the Romulan, playing up that, these are honorable people who are doing things from a different perspective, that are coming from their own angle. And then, not to mention the space battle in it is really cool. Given the limitations that they had in the 60s, there's a lot of really cool stuff with it. It's really modeled after like a submarine battle. So I think about, like, in a cinematic version of this episode, you could really play up some of those, like, space submarine, mashup ideas, and really play up the fact that it's like almost like Crimson Tide for like a modern example. Back then it was The Enemy Below. It was based on kind of the Phoretic October, something like that. Like, really play up some of those references, I guess.
Yeah.
I think it would be a make a killer movie, make a really good Star Trek movie. Run Silent, Run Deep, John Jones. That's right. Yeah, that's the episode. That's the movie that Bounce of Terror is kind of modeled after, a 1950s submarine movie. Yeah. So for all those reasons, for the Romulan Commander development, the opportunities there that would kind of be, able to be taken advantage of with more runtime, I think it would make a solid Star Trek movie. Rob, no one has mentioned those episodes yet, but they are cool options. Siege of AR 558 and the Pale Moonlight and Inner Arma Enim Silent Legis, I think I got. 3 Deep Space Nine episodes that are certainly big ones with a lot of big stuff happening in them, and have some obvious cinematic traits, all 3 of them. So we'll see. Maybe I think we're both down to our number 1 choice. So maybe we'll see. What's your number 1, Dan?
My number 1 is a Next Generation episode. I went with my number 1 pick as Yesterday's Enterprise.
Okay.
And to me, why I chose it is because there's a few reasons. I think that the story and how it's structured feels like a movie to me. It's very dramatic and has a very dramatic ending. And I think that with a bunch of new guest stars and stuff like that, it feels big and it's definitely cinematic. And I love the ship shots between the new and the old, and kind of showing the differences between the 2 ships and between the 2 crews, and so yeah, that's why I chose Yesterday's Enterprise.
I think that's an obviously awesome pick. Yesterday's Enterprise is way up there for me, is like favorite, among my favorite hours of Star Trek ever. Yesterday's Enterprise, I think, would really benefit from the standpoint of, developing the crew of the Enterprise C. I think more screen time would really kind of make you feel even more for those people that are, in that kind of impossible situation, having to make that impossible choice. I think, John Jones says, Rick Berman said if he knew in 1990 would make a movie in 1994, he would have saved Yesterday's Enterprise for that. That's pretty high praise coming from the guy who was making decisions. So obviously he was a big fan of the episode and big fan of the concept. Yesterday's Enterprise does a lot of big things, and I think all the visual stuff that you kind of referenced, so many cool shots of the new and the old ship, and the battle with the Klingon birds of prey. It was pretty well done for 1990 television. Given the limitations, they did a cool job with it. But you can imagine in a with a film budget, feature film budget, you could do a lot of cool things with 2 enterprises going at it with a Klingon fleet, trying to save history. There'd be a really cool opportunity there. But I think more time to develop, like Captain Garrett would really do that story a lot of good, to beef it up a little bit for a cinematic treatment. So can't argue with it at all. It's not on my list. Again, I had a good feeling that maybe you would pick it, given that you just kind of saw it again.
Yeah, that's why probably it's kind of has where it is in my list, because I just watched it. So
if I was in TNG season 3 and I had just watched it myself, I'd have a hard time not having it at my number 1, because it is so freaking good. It's in the conversation for me for like favorite episode of Star Trek of all time. Like when I watch it, I'm always, it never fails to kind of bowl me over. It's a really outstanding hour of television, and I think it would make a great 2-hour episode or 2-hour movie given a cinematic treatment. My number 1 is The Doomsday Machine, another TOS episode.
Nice.
This one is, I've always thought it's really kind of uniquely conceived as something that would really thrive as a movie. I can almost like envision, a movie version of the Doomsday Machine kind of starting with like a prologue, Star Trek 2009,
I was just gonna say that.
Yeah,
Yeah.
with the constellation going down and seeing Decker, make the choice to have his crew beam down to the planet, not realizing that the planet's going to be gone in, no time, basically killing his crew accidentally. The actor, Wayne Wyndham, I think is his name. Ashamed that I'm having to struggle for that name, but the actor does an amazing job in the episode, kind of telling you what happened, and his performance sells, I think, the backstory really well.
Mm-hmm.
But I think in a 2-hour treatment where you could maybe see that happen and then come across that character later, it would just make his character arc that much more satisfying. Yeah. And it already is satisfying. Yeah. I mean, it's already all-time great Star Trek. But and then on top of that, like on top of the opportunity there to kind of see what happened to the constellation firsthand, and let that, echo through the movie. That episode is so kind of built on the cool engineering stuff with Scotty trying to get the ship back up and running, with Kirk getting their hands dirty, doing everything they possibly can to just make the ship do anything. I think with more time, that would really, that could be like the greatest like Scotty stuff ever. Like seeing him make that ship, they really do the miracle worker stuff that Scotty's always known for. Yeah. He already, that again, the episode, the reason the episode's so good is because it already kind of does all this stuff, given the 50-minute limitation with the runtime. But I think with more, air to use and just more time, a lot of those things could really be played up. The Spock and Decker stuff on the Enterprise, like those kinds of conversations about, who's really in charge here, who's, trying to get Decker out of the captain's chair. That's done pretty quickly in the episode, and I think that could have been, not stretched out, but played up more. The struggle to kind of get him out of the captain's chair could have been a longer struggle. So yeah, the Doomsday Machine for me has always, since I've been a kid, it really stood out to me as like an all-timer. Again, kind of like Yesterday's Enterprise and Balance of Terror. But I think it's the episode that I think is uniquely built to I can just envision it in my head, how the movie would work, using the Decker stuff, the backstory with Constellation, and using the characters more. Just the reason I love the episode so much is it does so many cool things with Kirk and Spock and Scotty in particular. With more time, there's just more to do already there with those characters. So to recap real quick, my three, I had Starship Down from Deep Space Nine, season 4. I had Balance of Terror from the original series, and the Doomsday Machine is my number 1. Yeah. What about you? Your top three?
To recap my top 3, I had from Discovery, The Vulcan Hello, and The Battle of the Binary Stars. My number 2 was a Voyager episode, Scorpion, or episodes. And my number 1 was a TNG episode, Yesterday's Enterprise.
Yeah, I think first off, I think it's pretty cool that we both had no overlap, with 3 choices with stuff like this. I kind of expected maybe a little bit there, but I think we did a good job covering most of the shows. We had some Discovery, we had Voyager, we had Deep Space Nine, TOS, TNG. No Enterprise, like usual. Enterprise is the redheaded stepchild, kind of left out. Yeah. But I have a couple examples in my honorable mentions for sure. Give it some love, but I think it's cool that we covered most of the shows there, and that we had 6 unique examples. So yeah. Do any others kind of stand out to you as possibilities? Anything that you kind of just left off the top of your head? Do you have any pop into your head?
The one that I have that I had the hardest time leaving off was Timeless. From Voyager. I think just from like a cinematic standpoint with the transitions and cool visual effects with ship shots and stuff like that. It was just so hard to leave it off. But yeah, and then
It's a good one.
I wanted to cheat and do the motion picture just because cinematically that introducing the new ship, oh, man, it's awesome. That was hard to leave off. I didn't want to cheat though because technically, I mean, it is a film, but I guess according
you like
to
take another crack at it.
Yeah, I like according to like Jim Morehouse, Enterprise Extra, like the movies are episodes, so technically I could have made it work maybe. But,
That's true. That's true.
And then obviously, Best of Both Worlds, we just talked about that. So I figured I was like, no, let's just leave that off.
That speaks for itself.
Yeah.
We just did a whole episode about how cinematic it is.
Yeah.
Yeah. That's the thing. Like with the top three, it kind of forces us to whittle down our most passionate picks, at least as of today. If I had to do this next week, I'd probably have three, maybe two different episodes.
Yeah, same.
But it forces you to sit down and make choices and not just rattle off a whole bunch. But there are a whole bunch to rattle off. There's a lot of good choices, and in the chat, like I said earlier, John Jones mentioned the Way of the Warrior. That's an episode that I definitely give a lot of thought to. Rob mentioned 3 Deep Space Nine episodes. Siege of AR 558 is this big war story where they're nitty gritty on the ground fighting the Jem'Hadar at this like beat up lone little outpost where the soldiers are really beaten down and exhausted. There's a lot of really cool cinematic stuff in that. That would be a heck of a dark movie because it's a heck of a dark episode.
Yeah.
But there's certainly a lot of cinematic stuff there. In the Pale Moonlight is an obvious one with a lot of big stuff happening in an Inner Arma and Silent Legis. This is a Section 31 story with the Romulans and toying with using some inappropriate bad tactics to maybe win the war. There's a lot of cool ideas in that. John Jones just mentioned the Inner Light, one that I certainly gave some thought to because of just the structure of that episode is kind of amazing. That it gives you a little taste of this other life Picard's living, but it's an episode like all TV episodes is really defined by the runtime requirements. And the Inner Light could certainly benefit, I think, from more time to develop that other life Picard's living and to make us even more connected to his newfound family and life, I guess. So the Inner Light's definitely one that I saw mentioned on Twitter once or twice as well, and John Jones just mentioned it, so definitely a good one. Any others kind of come to mind for you? Where I kind of rattle off some of myself.
Yeah, you can run off yours.
City on the Edge of Forever. I name and pretty much everything we always talk about isn't one. That is my favorite episode of Star Trek, and I think it does have a lot of cinematic qualities to it. I think a lot of Voyager stuff because of the nature of that show, kind of really leaning on big science fiction ideas. Episodes like Scorpion, you named, Timeless, you just named, is a definite big one. I really like Blink of an Eye.
Yes.
The
awesome
time.
Movie, yeah.
Yes. Yeah. Yep. I think that offers a lot of cool possibilities. I think even basics, the crew stranded on that planet and having to, do the impossible, figure out a way to get the ship back. There's a lot of really cool, big stuff in that. I saw that mentioned on Twitter, and that's definitely a good call. Kind of a similar one to the Siege of AR 558, an episode that I really like, and I think you like it too. I can't remember specifically talking about it, but the name rings a bell for me. Something we have talked about is Memorial. It is like a really dark,
very dark,
very, very dark, very exhausting episode. But I think it's another one that tries to cram a lot of stuff into 40 minutes. It tries to sell a lot of stuff, a lot of character development in a short period of time, and I think with more time to play with, it could certainly it could work really well. But again, like the Siege of AR 558, which Rob mentioned as like a wartime story, that's very dark and very gritty. Memorial's kind of the same thing. It's very similar in that kind of tone. What else? from Enterprise, I did think of, and it kind of goes. I'm going to put these two kind of together. There's an Enterprise and a Voyager together that I think both have a unique challenge, which is Twilight from Enterprise and Year of Hell from Voyager, which both utilize the sort of reset button ending to get your stuff out of it. And I don't know how I feel about that as a to watch a movie to have everything kind of just at a snap go back to the way it was is a tough pill to swallow, I think. So that's a unique challenge that I think it would be kind of cool to play with and maybe see if there's another way to end that story in a little bit more of a big picture, satisfying way that might suit a feature film more. But the concepts of those episodes are certainly cinematic. There's a lot of big things happening in those episodes, big sweeping changes and dramatic things that are not usually seen on TV because you need a reset button to put things back the way they were for the show to keep going.
Yeah.
So I like those both a lot. The Vulcan arc, the 3-parter in Enterprise with I think very dramatic, a lot of cool big stuff, big set pieces. It's 3 episodes, so it already kind of does, if you watch them in sequence, it kind of feels like the running time of a movie. It's about 2 hours long. So that kind of works. And then the last one I'll throw out there is, I believe it's Jim, our good friend of the show, Enterprise Extras, #1 TNG episode. It's you're coming up on it at the end of season 4. It's Redemption. It's a 2-parter with a Klingon civil war kind of breaking out. Worf leaves the ship and has to go fight in the war, and the Romulans are doing all kinds of dirty stuff too, trying to manipulate things. There's a lot happening in it, and it's great. It's really, really good. But I think with the cinematic touch, that Klingon civil war idea could really be emphasized, and there would be a lot more possibilities there from a production standpoint to sell that idea and to, show it off. That's a big idea, and that's a really cool concept that I think TV kind of just limits a little bit with what you can do. Yeah. Let's see, what else do we have here?
Rob mentions Detrell might be an interesting dark movie too. Yeah, it's
a dark story.
I think Bill hit the nail on the head. There's a lot of Voyager episodes that are very dramatic and very cinematic in that regard. Yeah,
John Jones says Year of Hell, but in the end they die. Saying that they would just die, that would be it. Yeah. And that's fine. I mean, that's certainly, a lot of movies end that way. It certainly could work. Star Trek's a little different for, being an ongoing series, even with the movie. So it's kind of hard to wrap your head around that. But if that's the story we wanted to tell, you certainly could do it. John's saying he thinks there's a really good Q movie out there. Yes. Agreed. I'm trying to think what Q episode would fit best as a movie. Probably All Good Things.
Yeah, but All Good Things probably.
Threshold of the movie, Rob. Hey. Make a really good Star Trek B movie.
Yeah.
Okay. Sub Rosa the movie. That's even worse. It's not worth. I don't know if I'd rank it below Threshold, but I don't know if I could take 2 hours of Sub Rosa.
Yeah.
That's pretty brutal idea, Rob. Threshold at least would be like so bad it's good. Sub Rosa. I don't think of Sub Rosa as it's so bad it's good kind of episode. I think of it as a
so bad it's bad.
it's just so bad.
Yeah.
Yeah. The other one that I did see mentioned on Twitter that I think is really kind of cool. There's a 3-part episode at the beginning of season 2 of Deep Space Nine, The Homecoming, The Circle, and The Siege, involving like an old Bajoran resistance fighter that had been assumed dead, that they rescue off a Cardassian penal moon, and it shakes up all the Bajoran political dynamics, and Kira ends up having to get reassigned, and they put the new guy in the first officer's role in Deep Space Nine, and it reveals all this subterfuge with the Bajoran government and stuff, and it's a really good story, really good 3-parter. It's a highlight of early Deep Space Nine for sure, and because it's kind of similar to some of those 3-parters in Enterprise, you know, a 3-part story, 3 40-minute episodes is 120 minutes, 2 hours. So those 3-parters really do kind of have a cinematic quality to them, just by the nature of their, you know, they're 3 parts, so it's like 3 acts of a story. It's a 3-hour, 3-act story is cinematic. That's what movies are. So that's another option that I really like as well. In addition to a lot of the other 3-part stories in Enterprise, the Dr. Soong Augment story and the Andorian Romulan 3-parter as well, I think are all kind of already sort of built to be movies because of the 3-part structure.
Yeah.
John Jones says Bajoran Politics, the movie. Yeah, that's the one thing. It's really cool for us as fans of the show who are kind of interested in that world and stuff. But I think the challenge with that would certainly be, you know, that episode is so kind of built on the political situation on Bajor that I don't imagine a walk-in audience would get down with that. Bajoran occupation is not. We never really saw much from that, but that's certainly an option that, you know, if we're thinking about like what stories out there would make a cool movie from like Star Trek canon that haven't been, you know, done yet. You know, a story taking place during the Bajoran occupation is certainly a cool idea. Yep. Any others kind of come to mind for you, Dan? Any last minute add-ons or?
No last minute add-ons.
Yeah, I think I'm pretty much certainly not out of ideas. I could sit here and think all day and come up with different cool ideas. I think different episodes that I think would work. But we'll certainly leave that to the Twitter community and our viewers to keep naming names. The Harbinger as a romance movie, the Enterprise episode where Trip and T'Pol hook up. That's sure. Why not? Dan and I both like a good love story. You know, we're both not opposed to the Star Trek romance feature film, I don't think. So that's as good an idea as any.
Yep.
Sign me up. Yep. To kind of start the process of wrapping up, we always kind of, for anybody who's new out there, we always kind of finish up with naming off some Star Trek or maybe non-Star Trek podcasts that we kind of want to shed a light on, things that we've listened to in the last week, things we want to shout out because we love all the content out there. You know, we don't have a monopoly on good Star Trek conversation by any means. There's a ton of it out there.
Yep.
So have you anything stand out to you in the last week? Anything you've listened to that you kind of want to recommend?
So I listened to the newest Ready Room on Trek FM. Larry Nemecek is slowly becoming like the just host with
that's true.
Chris Jones on that. So and it was on just, you know, casting news and stuff for Star Trek, which was good, which is really good as always. So I thought I'd mention that podcast.
Yeah, I think I had just listened to it before we live streamed last week. So I think I shouted it out then, and I couldn't agree more. It was one of the better Ready Rooms Ready Room isn't necessarily something that we get often these days because Chris Jones has a lot he's dealing with, and it's kind of a show that maybe is more built around like it happens when there's big things to talk about, and it's usually Chris Jones and Larry Nemecek talking about the news of the day. That was really good. They covered all the, like you said, Star Trek Discovery new stuff coming out of the convention, and Patrick Stewart news, and the Chris Pine, you know, mess on Chris Hemsworth stuff. Yeah, covering just all the big news of the time, I guess. And Nemecek and Chris Jones have really good chemistry, and Like you said, it's really kind of becoming the Chris Jones, Larry Nemechek show.
Yeah.
It's been a while since there's been a Ready Room that wasn't that, and I have no problem with that.
Yeah.
Because they have a really good chemistry, really good vibe, really good thing going. So that's definitely a good recommendation. I haven't listened to it yet, but I can tell you right now that I'm going to recommend the new Trek Ranks, which is it's Mount Rushmore of Star Trek. It's the 5 people who contributed to Trek, non-actors, who would go on the Mount Rushmore of Star Trek. I just really like that idea, and definitely really looking forward to listening to it. I haven't gotten to it quite yet. I came out yesterday or maybe the day before. So I'm waiting for an opportune time where I can really focus on that and listen to it. Yeah. So definitely look forward to that. There's been a lot of really cool stuff in the last week. Anybody out there who went to Star Trek Las Vegas, pretty much all of their podcasts did a recap of the convention, telling their stories and stuff they did and people they met, and people who were in the room talking about what it was like to be in the room when Patrick Stewart came out at the convention to announce a new show. So there's a lot of really cool content out there for that. A lot of good episodes. Thad, who's often here, good friend of the show, his podcast, The Delta Flyer, has a really good episode about the convention recap, for example, that I did listen to and really liked. So, yeah. Cool.
Yep. All right, guys, that's been episode 60. It's crazy, 60 episodes of Trek Live. You guys know the drill. The discussion doesn't have to stop here. Come over to the Discord chat. Come over on Twitter. Keep the conversation going. We usually like to, preview the topic beforehand during the week, get a good conversation going. So definitely come check that out.
Yeah, well, I'm like always right around the middle of the week. We'll be able to let y'all know what the next episode is going to be, what we're going to be talking about.
Yep.
Hopefully know when exactly it'll be as we get closer to the weekend. It'll probably be Sunday again next week. Dan and I have some fantasy football commitments.
Yes.
Next Saturday.
Yep.
So we'll probably be pretty tied up on Saturday. I think it'll probably be on Sunday, but exact time to be determined. So keep your eyes peeled on Twitter for that. And yeah, we'll get that out as soon as we can.
All right, everyone.
All right.
Yeah. Thanks for watching, and we'll see you guys next week or on Twitter.
Yep. Thanks for stopping by.